Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March edition of IOG's Policy Crunch. I'm Jeff Kinder, the Executive Director for Science and Innovation here at IOG, and your host of Policy Crunch. Tonight, we're quite pleased to be partnering with Code for Canada, and I will be introducing my co-host shortly. But before I go any further, we would like to have a land acknowledgement. We pay respect to the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. If you're new to the IOG's Policy Crunch, let me just say a couple words about who we are and what we're all about. So the Institute on Governance is a nonpartisan, not-for-profit think tank located here in the Byward Market in Ottawa. And our Policy Crunch series is a monthly speaker series, panel series, where we explore topics around disruption and convergence in public policy and governance. Tonight we're going to be exploring innovation, but we go beyond sort of the traditional way of thinking of innovation as being heavily science and technology based. At IOG, we look at public sector innovation, policy innovation, social innovation, and other ways of thinking about innovation as well. Tonight's format will be, I'll introduce Luke in just a minute, and then he and I will introduce our three speakers, who will then give their pitches, if you will, short 2-minute pitches on each of their case studies. This will be an attempt to convince you that theirs is the case study that you should participate in the breakout rooms. We will then go to breakout rooms. We'll ask you to indicate in the chat function which case study you're most interested in hearing. And Becky will then sort all of us into the three breakout rooms using the codes ESDC, Toronto, and Fredericton. I'll repeat those in a little bit. Then we'll spend about 30 to 35 minutes in breakouts where you'll get to hear from our presenters on their case studies and should have plenty of time for questions and discussions in each breakout. At about 5 to 7, at the top of the hour, you'll get a notice that the breakout rooms will be closing within 60 seconds. You'll then be magically transported back into this main room where we'll close out the evening and be wrapped up by the top of the hour. In the event that you aren't able to make it back at that time, let me just go ahead and say that we look forward to our next Policy Crunch, which will be held on April 6th, and we'll be discussing the topic of innovation in the Arctic. So we hope you can join us in April as well. All right, without further ado, let me introduce tonight's co-host. We're very pleased, as I said, to partner with Code for Canada on the delivery of tonight's Innovation Showcase. And here to tell you a bit more about Code for Canada is their Director of Outreach, Luke Simcoe. Luke, over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Jeff. First up, I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen.
Yep.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for the introduction, Jeff, and thanks a lot to everyone who's here. I know just how kind of valuable time and even more so than time and energy feels right now as we close in on the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic. So, on behalf of the IOG and everyone at Code for Canada, I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of that time and energy with us tonight to learn a little bit more about us, our work, the work of our colleagues, and the work of the civic tech community. So my name's Luke. I'm the Director of Outreach at Code for Canada. And in that role, I get to help tell the story of civic tech and digital government and the impact that it's having, the impact of all those innovations that Jeff was talking about are having for Canadian residents. And as part of that work, I love talking to people like you. So my contact info is here. You can find me on Twitter. You can email me. I love having conversations about civic tech and digital government, and my inbox is always open. So if you haven't heard about Code for Canada, and it was a neat, interesting split in the poll that we saw earlier, we're a national nonprofit that connects government innovators, so like many of you in the room tonight, with people from the technology and design community, also I think like many of you in the room tonight. And we do that towards this mission of building what we call digital capacity in government. So helping the public sector best leverage the tools of technology and design to better serve residents, and also to build civic capacity in the broader technology and design sector. So create opportunities for people who aren't in government but might have technology and design skills to find a way to use those skills in the public interest, whether that's collaborating on government projects or participating in kind of the broader civic tech community, which works to create kind of positive impacts locally. And we do that work through a number of different programs. So we have a fellowship program, which you'll hear a bit about tonight, that embeds teams of technology and design professionals inside of government departments where they collaborate with public servants shoulder to shoulder on projects that matter. We have a community network, so we support the formation and the growth of grassroots civic technology groups in cities all across Canada. And again, you'll hear a bit about that from Sandy and the folks at Civic Tech Fredericton tonight. We have an education program that helps equip public servants with the skills they need to succeed in the digital era, whether that's learning more about Agile or how to do user design or user research, all of those different kinds of capabilities and capacities. We have a program called Civic Hall Toronto that is designed for kind of smaller governments and municipal governments and kind of provides collaboration support similar to the fellowship, but often at a smaller scale, and is also kind of a hub for local government innovators to connect and get access to events and training and other pieces of support for their digital transformation. And our newest program is called GRIT, which stands for Gathering Residents to Improve Technology. And it's what we like to call a civic usability testing program that connects people who are building digital services, so whether that's in the public sector or in the private sector, with a really diverse and representative sample of users, so they can test the products they're working for and kind of accommodate for some of those blind spots that we know technology can have. So that's a bunch about what we do, but ultimately we'd like to think that what we do at Code for Canada is sort of meet government teams wherever they happen to be on their digital transformation journey. So whether people need a long-term engagement like the fellowship, or something shorter, a few weeks or a few months like we offer at Civic Hall Toronto, or something as simple as a one-day usability testing session or a one-day workshop, we try to meet people where they are and support the public sector in advancing digital transformation. So that's that's a bit about Code for Canada, but given that we're at an event called Policy Crunch and I'm speaking to you, as a policy audience, I usually like to have this little bit of a disclaimer, right? I've said the word digital like 16 times already in 3 minutes. And I think in case you're under the impression that sort of digital and technology is over here and policy and that kind of work is over here, I like to try to sort of disabuse you of that notion if I can. And I do that by sharing this definition that we like to point to. This is sort of our working definition of digital. It comes to us from Tom Loosemore, who helped found the Government Digital Service in the United Kingdom. And it talks about how digital is all about applying the culture, practices, processes, and technologies of the internet era to respond to people's raised expectations. And if you'll notice, like, technology is the fourth thing in that list, right? There's all this culture, practice, process, all of which is, I think, very much the realm of policy. And I think if you look at this definition, it does a great job of maybe capturing like not a bad kind of goal or sort of mission statement of what policy can and should be doing in the 21st century, right? People have new expectations. They can get packages delivered to their door. They can order a ride. They can, they can access just about everything online. That's changed how they want to interact with services. And so how can we use the tools and affordances of technology to kind of get there and meet those expectations? So that's enough about me. And maybe enough about digital, but I'll stop sharing my screen, and it's my great pleasure to introduce the first of our case study pitches. So Akash Harpalani is a team lead at the City of Toronto's Transportation Services Department, part of the big data and innovation team there. He's going to tell you a bit about a project called Move, a project that's near and dear to my heart as a resident of the city of Toronto who cares deeply about road safety. He's going to tell you a little bit about what him and his team are going to share tonight.
Great, thanks, Luke. So I'd venture to say that most of the people in this room have been involved in what we call a near miss, a close call where you narrowly avoided being in a serious collision while going about your daily life. And unfortunately, some of you have not been so lucky and have been an unwilling participant in an event that you can recall in an instant even today. So that's the problem we're trying to address. I'm here from Transportation Services, and we're in the midst of a major transformation that's shifting our focus from the movement of vehicles to the movement of people with safety and equity at the heart of it. And in particular, road safety has become the priority as the City of Toronto has built out its Vision Zero program, meaning we've committed to getting the number of collisions that result in a fatality or in a serious injury down to zero. Now, how we plan and run this network is largely driven by two core data sets, traffic volume data, so how many people are moving across the city, where and when, and traffic collision data. And these data sets are housed in legacy systems that we built 30 years ago. So a few years ago, we started down the path of figuring out how to replace these systems, and we quickly realized that we didn't just need new software. We needed an entirely new approach, which brings us to today. So Maddie and I will be talking about how we created and launched Move, a modern digital platform for traffic collision and volume data, designed with our users at the center and as a catalyst for making our streets safer for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Akash. Okay, and next up is going to be Sandy McKinnon, Executive Director of Greater Fredericton Social Innovation. Sandy, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from a breezy Fredericton. It's quite nasty out there today. Really nice to see everyone. Michael, can you raise your hand? There. So Michael and I will be co-presenting and giving you a couple, maybe 3 examples of some really cool projects we're working on here at Civic Tech Fredericton, and our kind of model and how we've engaged with new Canadians who arrive in our area. So anyway, we're doing things the maritime way. So if you would like to join us, we'd love to have you.
Thanks, Sandy. We've been so impressed with everything that Civic Tech Fredericton's managed to accomplish, both before, during, and hopefully after the pandemic. So our final pitch comes courtesy of Code for Canada fellow Thomas Hoy, who's representing his fellowship team and his colleagues at ESTC, Employment and Social Development Canada, who's going to tell you a little bit about how they're using a practice called speculative design to plan for policies in the future.
Thanks, Luke. As Luke mentioned, I'm one of the Code for Canada fellows working at ESTC, and I would like to introduce to you someone who's very special to me. This is Hollow, my virtual assistant. Hey, Hollow, what's on my schedule for the day?
You have a physio appointment coming up in 1 hour. The roads look fine. It's 24 degrees and dry. There's nothing else. Until your hot date with Julie at 7:30.
All right, that's enough for now, Hollow. So this holographic bear virtual assistant is actually the result of a speculative design sprint. If you want to learn more about the how and the why of that speculative design sprint, come and join us in the ESTC breakout room.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. That's awesome. Okay, so as I said, we're going to now shift to the breakout portion of the evening. So
thanks everyone for joining us. I'm really excited for this conversation and to share a little bit more about what we're doing at the City of Toronto. As I mentioned, like we're looking for this to be pretty informal. So we do have a deck we'll walk through, but if you have a question at any time, do feel free to jump in or put a question in the chat, and any questions we don't get to throughout the presentation, we'll get to at the end. So I'm Maddie Ewens. I'm a product manager on the Move team.
And I'm Akash Tripolani, team lead for a team called the Big Data Innovation Team. We're essentially an internal data science team within transportation services at the City of Toronto. And as I sort of alluded to in my pitch a few minutes ago, our focus is on road safety. So in 2019, there were 64 people that died on our streets last year. Most of these were pedestrians, and there's an additional 250 people that suffered serious injuries that are not captured in this number. And what's really important to remember here is that yes, that's a number, and these are dots on the map that represent those collisions. But there are individuals or families that have had their lives changed forever as a result of these events that were largely unpredictable, unforeseen. They sort of woke up and went about their daily lives, and then something happened that changed their lives forever. So this leads us to the Vision Zero program. I mentioned this in the beginning, but the City of Toronto has adopted a Vision Zero approach. And this really represents a systems approach to dealing with road safety. It was something that was introduced by the country of Sweden over 2 decades ago. And because of the success of that program, and because it's grounded in something that makes a lot of sense, many cities in North America have adopted this sort of approach, including large cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, Montreal, Vancouver, you name it. And it starts with an acknowledgement that that collisions, especially those that result in people being killed or seriously injured, are not the fault of those people that use our system. It's not the fault of our road users. It's a flaw in the system itself. And users can't be perfect. Our infrastructure should allow for mistakes to be made without sort of the really severe consequences resulting from that mistake. So prior to Vision Zero, many cities, including Toronto, our approach to road safety really emphasized reducing collisions. And so we would measure these total number of collisions on a year-to-year basis, and our focus was on trying to get that number down and minimizing these sort of inevitable events. Vision Zero really shifts this focus to focusing on the system, not the user. So how can we build our roads, our transportation network in a more systems approach manner, so that those collisions that result in those fatal or serious injuries don't happen in the first place. And again, focusing on those sort of KSIs, those killed or seriously injured collisions, not on trying to reduce all collisions. But the other part of that is not just sort of reacting to things as they happen, putting a larger emphasis on a more proactive, systematic approach to reducing those killed or seriously injured collisions across the board. So the City of Toronto first went down this path starting in 2015, but we officially launched our plan in 2016. It was called Vision Zero 1.0. And it really focused on 6 emphasis areas. So these are sort of outlined in this graphic here, but those emphasis areas focused on what we called our vulnerable road users. So pedestrians, cyclists, school children, and older adults are also mentioned here. And there's sort of subsets of our modes, but really we were seeing some numbers that indicated that those 2 subsets in particular deserved a special attention: motorcyclists and aggressive driving distraction. And the plan really focused on a sort of near-term action plan of 50 countermeasures. So things we could do in the next 5 years that were going to be enacted to reduce the number of KSIs happening in our city. And over the following 3 years, between 2016 and 2019, we learned quite a bit, not just based on what the data was showing us, but just in the process of rolling out a widespread plan such as Vision Zero. We learned what are sort of the barriers that we face in trying to solve such a wide-reaching problem, and also as we started to work more closely with these specific countermeasures, we learned what worked and what didn't, and what were the things that really needed addressing. And as a result, in 2019, we came out what we called Vision Zero 2.0. And the goal was the exact same, to get the number of killed or seriously injured collisions down to zero. But it really focused on more targeted problems that we had uncovered under the previous 3 years. And this is sort of, this graphic that's on the screen is an example of that. You know, if you dove into this graphic represents the occurrence of all pedestrian KSIs. And what's really kind of stark here is that 40% of all pedestrian collisions occur at what we call the mid-block. So not actually at the intersection, but a result of pedestrians sort of crossing or interacting with streets in between intersections. And Vision Zero 2.0 really placed a larger emphasis on data-driven proactive decision-making, which drives nicely with what we're going to talk about here, which is our approach to MOVE. So again, sort of the bedrock of all of Vision Zero analysis is the use of these two major traffic data sets: traffic volume data, which describes how many people are using the transportation network, where they're using it, and when they're using it, and traffic collision data. And we're going to touch a bit further on this later in this deck, but it's not just Vision Zero initiatives that those things tie into. It's really used as the bedrock for a bunch of different traffic analyses. And so, for example, if we wanted to know if usage had changed as a result of the installation of a new bike lane on a specific street, the use of those two data sets is sort of key to figuring out whether those interventions have made a difference in sort of the safety of our network, but also whether we've seen things like bike volumes increasing, has there been traffic diverted to other streets, a number of those questions. And there's plenty of use cases all across the board.
So to give you a really concrete example of how data is used and to dive into one of those use cases, on the left, we have Julie. Julie's a resident of the city of Toronto. She has 2 young kids, and every day she walks her kids to school. To get to school, they have to cross this crosswalk. Even though there's a crosswalk there, Julie's concerned about speeding and about kind of aggressive drivers and about the safety of the crosswalk. So Julie calls the city of Toronto and requests that a traffic light be put in to replace the crosswalk to make it safer for her and her kids to cross the street. Behind the scenes, what a lot of residents don't see is the staff. So a request like a one from Julie might land on Terry's desk. And Terry is a traffic ops investigator who works within transportation services at the city of Toronto. Terry is the kind of person that makes traffic lights happen. So he'll get calls from residents like Julie. Sometimes he gets requests from city councilors about unsafe intersections. And then Terry will do a ton of analysis on this intersection. So he'll look at the surrounding area, and he'll also look at historical data about that location. And for this, he needs crash and flow. So as Akash mentioned, there are 2 data sets that are really the bedrock of this analysis. On the left, we have crash, and that's the tool that staff use to access the history of collisions across the transportation network. And on the right, we have flow, and that is the tool that staff use to access that traffic volume data, how people are moving through the transportation network. If you can tell by the way these look, these systems were built in the 80s and 90s. So they were modern for their time, but compared to the tools we use every day, they are definitely quite old and dated. And on the flip side, they're not just old pieces of software, but they haven't kept up with the needs of transportation services and of traffic engineering within the city of Toronto, and how Toronto's adopted Vision Zero. So these tools were meant to serve all the processes at the time they were created, but they're limiting, and they don't meet our needs anymore. These are other examples of old tools that investigators and other city staff use. So on the left, we have a hand-drawn diagram of an intersection and various collisions that happen there. And on the right are manual counting tools and forms that, that are actually used to collect some of that data. And I think what's important to point out here is that this information isn't necessarily digitally compatible, and it might be siloed. And so what we have here, and what Akash's team and various other staff members at the City of Toronto identified was a big opportunity to modernize the tools and the ways that this data is accessed.
So about 3 years ago now, we kind of recognized that these systems weren't working for us, and that they were well and the past of their life cycle. And so we kind of started down this approach of figuring out, hey, like what, how do we kind of go about replacing crash and flow? And at the start, we used a very kind of traditional approach that's common in government, using one of our existing procurement vehicles. So we did what most do in this case. We kind of looked at our existing systems, figured out what the existing features were, documented it all, started talking to various stakeholders and users in the division, started drafting up a list of requirements. And the plan was, of course, to kind of, go out to the market, get a vendor on board through a request for proposals. So get a bunch of proposals from vendors across the vendor landscape, and come back with a single vendor that would take our requirements away and give us a system that would, we hoped, work beautifully for our future needs as it relates to traffic collision and volume data. But we started thinking more deeply about this, and we kind of realized, based on past experience, because this is not the first time that government has procured software, nor is it the first time our division had procured software, that this was likely going to result in just a replication of our existing system. Yes, it would be built on more modern technology. Yes, it would be less prone to failure, but we hadn't really updated how our processes should work in over 30 years. And we didn't just want the same thing that we were using currently. Our programs and policies had evolved a lot. We now had, for example, a Vision Zero program that was completely new and had very different use cases from the road safety program that existed in the 80s and 90s. And we also didn't want to get something that we couldn't iterate on later on. There was a huge risk for us in sending something out to the market and getting something that just didn't meet our needs. At the same time, we were also becoming increasingly tapped into sort of the increasing landscape of digital service organizations that were really focused on, as Luke kind of mentioned at the beginning, increasing digital capacity in government. So there were sort of internal government organizations like the Canadian Digital Service that were really focused on bringing in the best practices out that currently existed in the private sector into government. But then there were also advocacy organizations such as Code for Canada that were really looking, there were nonprofits really looking to build digital capacity within these organizations. And so we had started having conversations with organizations such as these, and that led us to a completely new way of developing software, at least for us, which was through the Code for Canada Fellowship. So this was in 2018, and we started by bringing in a fellowship team of 3 fellows that kind of took us down this path.
Yep. So for anyone that doesn't know, the Code for Canada Fellowship is a 10-month program that embeds 3 tech and design professionals within government for that period. And they work alongside government partners. So the 3 fellows, they're here on the screen, Andrew, Evan, and Pal. They joined Akash's team on the ground, working side by side every single day. And they worked very closely to explore the problem space and look at what opportunities were there. And this is what a lot of the work looked like. it was sitting down with staff within transportation services and learning about their process and their environment and the kind of work they're doing. Doing this research, but also building prototypes and getting their feedback. So you can see in the background on the whiteboard, there are various wireframes with lots of sticky notes over them. So getting feedback directly from users before they even committed any code to any like software system or repository at all. And this process allowed them to really put users at the center. So what are they thinking, feeling, doing, trying to accomplish? Like Akash said, kind of flipping that product development on its head, and instead of just going in with requirements, saying, okay, what are the users doing and how do we build software and tools to support them? And in the process, you can flip to the next slide, Akash. In the process, this allowed the fellows and myself, who now I'm working with the team. The team has continued in a new form, but we've continued on as a team of 3, a small product team of 3. It allowed us to build trust with users, and it allowed our users, who are internal staff at the City of Toronto, to be more prepared for the tool and be ready for it and excited for it. So I'm very excited to say that in December of 2020, after lots of research, prototyping, and then getting our prototype to a state where it was ready and real to be put in users' hands and be used, we launched Move. And just a quick note here that we're still here, and we're still building and responding to user feedback. So this is not the end of the road for Move. So without further ado, we will jump into a demo. It's a very, very condensed version of what Move is and can do. And so we can share some resources where you can find out a lot more about our process and read up about who Move is for, and the kind of use cases for it.
Great, thanks, Betty. And please let me know if the sound is not working immediately.
Hi, I'm Maddie Ewens, Product Manager on the Move team. Today, I'll be giving you a quick tour of Move. Move brings together the City of Toronto's traffic volume and collision data sets. This data is used by city staff who perform different kinds of analyses of Toronto's transportation network. If you need more background context, I'll add a link in the description to read more about the history of the project and various use cases of Move. Let's dive in. Move is built on the latest open source software for modern web browsers, which is a huge improvement over existing tools and gives staff better access from home and on the go. At a glance, we can see a heat map of traffic volume estimates in teal and collision hotspots in dark orange. Usually, when staff conduct analyses, it's on a specific location or area. We can use the search bar to find locations and navigate around the map quickly. Let's search for Danforth and Dawes, where new bike lanes were installed along the Danforth last year. When we click on this row, we're taken directly to the intersection. Now that we've zoomed into our intersection of interest, we can see various data points on the map. Large purple circles represent recent traffic counts. Large gray circles represent older traffic counts, which might be of interest when looking at historical trends. Small red dots represent collisions, and there are other points of interest on the map as well. For example, this green marker, which represents a nearby school. To gain a better understanding of the area around the intersection, we can toggle layers on and off here in the legend. Let's try turning off the collision layer, and we can see that the map is a lot clearer. But let's turn that back on for now. We can also change the time range. So instead of looking at 10 years of data, we might want to look at 5. We can zoom in, zoom out, pan around, and we can also change the underlying map to get a better sense of the infrastructure and buildings. Let's change that back to map view for now. Having surveyed the area around the intersection, I'm ready to dive into the data here at Danforth and Dawes. We can see a summary of the collisions and studies at this intersection, and filters allow us to drill down to the data that we're interested in. Let's say we're interested in seeing any collisions involving pedestrians that happened on a weekday, so I'll select Monday through Friday, and during the morning rush, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And there we have it, only the data that we're interested in. Within a couple of clicks, I can also access traffic volume data. We can preview different types of reports, see a record of all the studies that have happened at this location, and download reports in CSV or PDF format for further analysis. Under the hood, we've cleaned up this data and made it easier to add more kinds of data in the future. Sometimes, the data is tooled for use and we need to go out and collect new data. Staff can quickly and easily request new data by filling out a simple form. So there you have it, a quick tour of Move.
I think we had a bit of a gray box over the video there.
Sorry, was that for very long? I hope not.
No, I think
Okay.
it was okay. So that's only a slice of what Move can do, but hopefully that gives a better idea.
I'm Maddie Ewens, product
Whoops.
manager on the Move team.
Maddie
Today,
Inception.
I'll be giving you a quick tour of Move. Move brings together the City of
Right.
Toronto's...
Nope.
Perfect.
Press the slide. There we go.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so at this point, you've seen a bit of Move, what it can do, what it looks like. Definitely a major upgrade from the existing tools. My favorite part of it is that it's accessible on Google Chrome, which sounds so simple, but the existing tools were only compatible with Windows 7 and Internet Explorer. So at some point in the future, we'd also, a personal goal of mine is to make it mobile compatible so people can check it from their phones. And truly like have it on the go and respond to the environments that we're all in at home. So some of you might be wondering, okay, we presented this big upfront about Vision Zero and now we have this tool, but really what it's done is replicate the existing process, which is kind of reactive, like when Julie picks up the phone, Julie, the resident of Toronto, calls the city and then Terry responds to her request. Well, we know that Move hasn't solved all the problems of getting to Vision Zero. And it's still serving a bit of a reactive process. But not every neighborhood has a Julie. Some neighborhoods speak louder than others. And really, building Move is the first step. We needed the better tools so we could start this platform to continue to build on top of it and build in more functions and give more access to data so that we can enable that divisional shift towards more proactive and equitable decision making. So we're going to talk a little bit about our lessons learned to wrap us up.
Great, thanks, Maddie. And again, these are just sort of a snippet of some of the things we've learned throughout this process, but we picked out a few that we thought might be pretty relevant to a lot of the people that are kind of here today. So hopefully this spurs some discussion. And again, if you want, we're happy to answer questions from the chat or afterwards as well. So our learning number one, and I think this one is maybe not so surprising, but you really need champions across all levels. You can't just go to your senior management, get buy-in from them, and then hope everything will kind of go smoothly from there. And there's two parts to this. Number one, you obviously need buy-in from the people that are going to be using your software every day. So those are the folks that are really impacted by this major shift in software and decisions and processing. And yes, your managers and directors are often the ones that are sort of coming to you with this top-down view, and then they're of course important to have on board. But the staff that are working with the data know the processes inside out, and they know, for example, that they're wasting 50% of their time opening up 5 different applications and converting data from one proprietary format to another. So you need all of those lenses for feedback, and also to get credibility from your users.
The second thing that we wanted to, in talking about our lessons learned, that really came to light was how open data and working in the open and blogging openly and talking about Move openly and having an open source GitHub repository and putting everything out there, it has so many hidden benefits that we didn't predict. I think one of the ways that I've always perceived working in the open is that it allows you to make connections with other groups and other people doing similar things. And we've definitely had so much interest and support from the civic tech community and champions and friends and allies outside of the city of Toronto. But I think the more surprising thing that we've found is the ways that we've been able to use our open source information internally and to share information. We have better feedback loops. So the other day, someone wrote to our email inbox with a bug report, and I was able to respond to them and say, hey, I just logged your issue on GitHub, no obligation to take a look, but here's the link if you'd like to keep in touch with what's happening to this bug. And that was really cool to be able to kind of acknowledge that feedback and not just send an email back and say like, hey, I heard you, but for him to be able to see that feedback actually went somewhere to be actioned. And we've also had some feedback from our partners in technology services who've said like, this is some of the best documentation we've ever seen from a project. So that's really cool to be able to like hear that feedback and see that feedback in action.
Yeah, and one thing I've kind of gotten a little bit of joy out of is my director, who's been very supportive of the project and is constantly a champion externally and internally for this work that we're doing, but isn't necessarily involved in the details. And so I was able to, at the last release, send over a list of GitHub issues that our new release sort of addressed. And I can only imagine now that, a bunch of our directors are constantly going on GitHub now, checking these issues. I don't know if this is actually happening in practice, but it gives me joy to think about. And the third lesson here, and we'll end here, but this kind of sentence is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's pretty obvious that earning the trust of your users is critical to the success of any project or any product. But it's almost worse to release something that doesn't meet their expectations and then end up losing their trust forever. One thing we've been pretty conscious of, and this kind of speaks to the benefits of working in the open, is that we've continuously kept our users updated, and as a result, they've been pretty understanding when we face delays. We're not operating in sort of this black box atmosphere where we go away and then don't come back until a year later. And so when something doesn't work as expected, they know that there's sort of this open communication that they can come and talk to us about, and it doesn't just result in them shutting down and not using the product moving forward. And one thing I'll just add is that this doesn't just apply to trust of the team or to the product, but in the data itself. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of our users have had trust issues with the underlying data in the past, and as a result are untrustful of or distrustful of data that's feeding into Move. And so one thing that's really been on the top of our mind is trying to figure out how to regain that trust, so that when they're using Move, they're not just constantly thinking, hey, is this data or is this increasing data due to something wrong with the sensor that's capturing this data? How do we know that this data has been validated and that we can actually trust it to use the decisions that we're making on a day-to-day basis? I don't know if you have anything to add, Maddie, but those are sort of the 3 lessons that came to mind as we kind of walked through these slides, but happy to take any questions at this point, or if anyone else has anything they want to add and share their own experiences developing digital projects or products, we'd be happy to help facilitate an open discussion. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll just end with this quote, which is that safer streets really means that we're creating a more livable city for all of our citizens, all Torontonians, regardless of what mode they use. So whether they drive, take transit, bike, or walk, our goal is to really create a city that makes people feel safe as they navigate their daily lives. So again, thanks so much for your time, and we'll open it up to Q&A.
The floor is open.
And I will unshare my screen so I can see your faces again.
I think that last piece about keeping trust in the data is super relevant to the question. I see one question that we didn't get to from Jennifer about how the data is collected. I think that's a great question, and I might take a shot at it because I've been with the Move team for almost a year now, but before this, I'm a newbie to traffic engineering, and everything that goes into it is like way more complicated than I ever expected. So a lot of the volume data is collected by, some of it is done manually, but it's more and more done by video. So there are video cameras that are set up, and then like cars and pedestrians are counted. And then that information is turned into a report that's we then input into our database and our systems. And then the collision data comes from the police. So we get kind of like a simplified version of what happens when collisions happen. So information like where it happened, when it happened, and then we kind of pull out details of it. So was it involving a pedestrian? Was it involving a cyclist? Kind of the age of the people involved, and then that data is then used for analysis, like we explained. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Akash.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great summary. The only piece on the sort of traffic volume side I'll add is just that there's sort of a wide array of technologies that we can kind of use to collect that data. Our focus has really been moving towards sort of more permanent data sources. So a lot of our current data collection is very reactive. Someone wants to do a study, or someone is interested in putting in or developing a new neighborhood improvement study, and so they kind of put in a request for a variety of counts, and we kind of do it at that point. But more and more, we're trying to install more permanent sensors. Some of that could be video based, but some of that could just be there's maybe a little bit to the weeds.
There's the bike boxes that are in some bigger cities that count like the number of cyclists that go by, and that's an example of a data source. It's not.
Yeah, that's sort of built into the road, so it's a sensor that captures people as they move across it. But there's a whole sort of study of traffic data collection that is interesting, but also a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. In my previous lives, I worked at ICBC in driver's licensing and road safety, and I do consulting in that arena now. So one of the biggest issues we have is around data integrity. And in BC, for example, we have so many different sources that collect data in different ways, and integrating those that in a way that can be holistically used for crash analysis is incredibly tricky. And police reports have been, I know, notoriously unreliable in terms of the information they collect. So cross-tabulating sources of data is very labor intensive, but pretty critical in terms of getting a correct picture of what's actually happening. And I don't think we've managed to solve our problems. I know that Ontario has had some pretty cool initiatives with respect to collection of police data. One of the other issues I was going to just throw out there too, in terms of crash reportings, is the reporting threshold that are set for actually having to and mandating a report to police when a crash happens, and that can impact your data as well. Is that something that you've come across or thought about, or just throwing that out there? Number of data issues.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the issues we've kind of faced is that the way data is collected and sort of how things are classified have kind of changed over the years. So comparing, for example, the total number of collisions that took place 15 years ago isn't using the same underlying set of assumptions that our current data is being collected under. But we do get collision data from two different data sources. So one is from the police. So that's sort of when the police shows up at the scene and records a collision and takes in all that information. But the second is from our collision reporting centers. So it includes the collisions where people are going to these centers and self-reporting as well. Now, one thing that's very obviously missing are sort of incidents that don't involve vehicles. So, for example, if there's or moving vehicles, to be specific. So, one thing that we don't capture are during incidents with cyclists, which is an important thing for us to track for safety reasons, but it's something we don't currently capture in crash. And so it's something we're kind of talking about right now. But yeah, I mean, like there's a huge effort to just validate all of these collisions. We have staff in-house whose entire jobs are dedicated to sort of validating that data and making sure that, this collision that says it took place at this location, did it actually take place at that location, or is the latitude and longitude that's been submitted with this record incorrect? And of course, these are driving these major decisions on where infrastructure should be installed, what sort of interventions we roll out. So it's important to get these details right.
So Andy has a hand up. Andy?
Hey, amazing to see this.
Andy.
I'm very curious about how like adoption and like change management, how that's going now that you're live.
Good question. We initially, after launching, we knew that we didn't include everything that we could possibly include in Move, kind of in the interest of getting something out there and then continuing to build on it. So when we initially launched, we really marketed it to the core power users. And we hosted a number of training sessions. So like we made them available to across the division to anybody that was interested. I think that there's a lot of processes that had to shift with the new software. We recognized it wasn't just a matter of like swapping one software in for another. People have to learn it and adapt their processes, their non-software based processes around that as well. And so we made ourselves available, and we're like still getting feedback from people and making changes and working with them to figure it out. So it's going, and I think the reception has been really positive from our power users. And because Move is available, and I'm just typing this in the chat now, Move is available to all city staff. Like anyone can go on and use Move. And so we've seen a lot of organic use in different divisions. So even though we haven't really marketed it to anyone outside of our adjacent like user groups, we've seen just kind of natural adoption because anyone can go and search for data and download data. And so I think that like working with users over the last 2 years and socializing it through like at the working level, but also at the senior management level, and then just having a tool that's like really much more pleasant to use. I think there's been a lot of just organic interest.
So we're about to run out of time, but let's see if we can squeeze George's question in quickly. George?
Hi, everyone. George Langlois. I'm with the Canada Revenue Agency. First things first, Akash and Maddie, wonderful presentation. I liked how you described Vision Zero and whatnot. I'm wondering about some thoughts, and maybe we won't have time to cover them all, but let's get in touch afterwards if you don't mind. Um, when I think of digital, right, there's sort of the big data, and you can imagine our Canada revenue, we have a lot of that. And when, digital is more than even the data or the systems. I know we've gone into a territory, for example, where we use behavioral science, and we might do what's called a nudge campaign, right, to get people's behaviors to change on that side. But also I love the conversation about data collection, and it made me think of a website, right? MyFitnessPal, which collects fitness information from the actual people themselves. And I was wondering if you had thoughts on sort of those kind of digital practices, right? If you'd ever collect data from actual Torontonians,
We've got 10
and
seconds before we're going to lose the
those
room.
type of things. And that's fine, and we can connect later. But
Okay.
thank you very much for the presentation. I really, really enjoyed that quite a lot.
Thank
Okay, no.
Okay, thanks, Michael. So that's Michael and I, but you can see us anyways on the top of your screen. Thanks for joining us. We love to tell the story of Civic Tech. I'm going to give you a little overview of a couple of our projects. Michael is going to focus on a specific project that we're working on with our food center, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the culture and the vibe at Civic Tech Fredericton and some of the other value add. So next slide, Michael. Yeah, so since COVID, we've been meeting online every Tuesday night, actually in this exact time slot. And we're still getting between 20 and 30 people and doing everybody into their breakout rooms. And so we haven't really slowed down at all, but we have saved some money on pizza. We delivered pizza to everyone. So next slide, Mike. So it's really interesting for a small maritime city that we have Civic Tech volunteers from all over the world. And anyway, I think that's really important because bringing a global perspective to some of our local IT volunteers and the mentoring and conversations are pretty engaging. So I just wanted to use this slide to give you an idea that that we have quite a diverse team. So our model in Fredericton is a little bit different than some of the others across the country. We have partnered with Greater Fredericton Social Innovation. It's a local charity, has charitable status, and Civic Tech is tucked underneath Greater Fredericton Social Innovations. So that really enables us to leverage their relationships and partnerships in our community. Our city of Fredericton hosts all of our licenses, and we get donations from the community foundation and our tech community, like companies like Remsoft. And our rent is paid by the Windsor Foundation. So the partnership with a local charity is really different than all the other Civic Techs across the country. So one of the projects I want to talk to you about is one we call the Caring Calendar. So a couple of years ago, we brought together about 50 some odd people from all of our different faith-based groups in our city. And the idea was to map out all the services they provide to people in the circumstance of poverty in our city. And I'm sure that you're aware in your own communities how much work our faith-based groups do. And what was pretty amazing on that day, as you know, they would report back and everything that they did, and they all said, we could do more, we could do more. It was quite an impressive day. And they do everything from laundry, showers, taxes, GED. It just, the work they do is colossal. But what they don't do is have a tool to coordinate their services. Next slide, Michael. So this was a project that we brought to Civic Tech, and we've been working on it in a very close relationship with a number of our early adopter faith-based groups in the city. And this also includes our one mosque and one synagogue. And so we're really happy to engage with that community also. So the Caring Calendar does three things. It's a tool for our faith-based groups and some other service providers to coordinate their services. So if I'm at church and I'm on this corner and I have brown bag lunch at lunchtime, and then the church on the next corner has a meal in the evening and I have leftover stuff, then I can run it up to that church. So they could look at coordinating some of their services and resources. It works as a referral tool. So if somebody showed up for, say, shower hour and they missed the time frame, then they can go into the Caring Calendar and see where they can direct the person to the next service. And then also, especially even around the Christmas holiday, it's a great tool to look at and identify where there are some gaps in our city. And so we launched the Caring Calendar. It was a year ago, pardon me, in beta. And of course, COVID has slowed down quite a bit of the services that our community is providing, and they're being really creative in one-offs and in parking lots and whatever. So we're looking forward to, over the next few months, to get the Caring Calendar ramped back up. Our hope is that within the next 18 months, when our faith-based groups are very accustomed to using the Caring Calendar, that we can turn it into an application where people who are looking for services can find the services using the Caring Calendar. So we've had some interest from other civic techs across the country to also implement the Caring Calendar in their community. Next slide, Mike. So this is an interesting project. We enter a data visualization competition every year at the University of New Brunswick, and typically we enter because we need money for pizza, and so this is one of the projects that we worked on, that we came in second, so that was great. We looked at the role our transit system plays in social isolation of older adults in our city. And what the team did, if you can see down to the first image on your left, is they rated all the bus stops on how accessible they were. So like this image, it's a pole in a snowbank that got a very low score. And if you look at the image over on your right, this bus stop had a sloped sidewalk, a shelter, a seat, a little paved path. So that got a really high score. They looked at our population from 2016 and used some Esri projection data and projected our population into 2028 and identified where the majority of older adults are going to live in the next 10 years. So we were able to provide our municipality with a 10-year plan saying these are the bus stops that you need to update over the next 10 years. So they were really happy to see, a project like that. But one of the things that was really interesting is our local Meals on Wheels, when they saw this project, this was really important to them also, because the average citizen that they deliver 200 meals every single day to is 79 years old. So this was really interesting for them to be able to look at, okay, this is where we're going to have some growth in our older adult population. And then I love that somebody created this little meme and it was shared it on Twitter after we got some press about winning this prize. Next slide, Michael.
I guess this next one is me, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'll talk hopefully briefly as well. I can really get rolling, but about a current project in flight with Civic Tech Fredericton, and that's the meal planner tool that we're developing, in partnership with the Greener Village Food Center here in the Greater Fredericton area. So, to start with, our client, Greener Village, approached and asked for help with one of their programs programs. They, as I said, they started as the Fredericton Food Bank, and they've expanded into a lot of really innovative ways to help people in the community. So they've got, as it says, a learning kitchen where you can come in and learn. They've got just big, huge community gardens outside and tunnels to help, to help people learn to grow their food and what can be done there. The unique boutique, life skills development, and they have a program, Meals Made Simple, which is like eating healthier for less money, helping people again eat something that's good for them and nourishing and healthy, but also be mindful of a budget and be mindful of like developing the skills to plan your meals and to plan food budgets. So the ask was if we could pitch in with them and develop a tool that would help this program and help enable it. So to that end, we are working on the Good Meal application. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Sorry, my slides are popping back and forth. But so our team is comprised of, I mean, at this point, it's actually grown and grown and grown. Civic Tech Fredericton is awesome like that. We have more than 20 volunteers taking part, and it's a mix of people with all sorts of technical and digital skills, developers, architects, as you see there, people in QA, all sorts of project managers, so many chefs, but people that could be Scrum Master, people that can coordinate training, partnership, as I said, with the Greener Village Food Bank, them as users, people that are focused on user experience and UI. And there you go. We've also anointed ourselves Team Sparkle because we sparkle and everything we do sparkles. We're practicing, as it says, we practice an agile Scrum methodology, working on a way of working that's flexible and allows for people to give their time, which is so valuable, in sort of, 4 hours a week. It goes up and down, but the idea is that we get together as a larger group each week. And we also have time after that or before that for a status meeting, do some training sessions within the group, within different parts of the group around, whether that be coding, designing, or testing, because people come, to contribute and they want to give something to these projects, but they also want to learn, and we want to create that environment. So there's a lot of opportunity to try and give what you know, and then also build on what you know. So people are learning, to use to develop in our framework. You can see there at the bottom, it's just we're on React, on GraphQL, on Postgres, hosted on AWS, and productivity tools like ZenHub, GitHub, Slack, and then, like, of course, Google sharing are all in play. So it's just a great team and a great place for that, the ability to contribute and the ability to learn. And it's going to be a pretty incredible tool, and it's already underway, but we're working towards that first minimal viable or minimal fantastic product that Greener Village can really use to help them with the program. So already we've got the back end, and you're able to log in and see recipes and build a plan, but we're really trying to expand that to allow the Greener Village staff to help find the right customer and customize the plan for that household and generate a shopping list, that, as well as recipes that they can take home, and the shopping list to help guide, as I was mentioning, with planning and budgeting the shop for each week, for each set of meals. That I kind of blew past it, but they're customized for each household. The Greener Village sits down with each person that wants to be part of this program and speaks with them and finds out who will and won't eat what in the household and what will really work for their family so that it sticks. And the idea is to have a tool that allows for that flexibility. So we're really working on the ability to manage all of that meal information and to manage that interaction with the client. And we see all sorts of future possibilities around, scoping it towards dietary needs, scoping it towards what products are available in the stores and on the shelves, and what's in people's pantries. So there's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of great ideas floating around as to how we can build it out for them now and then in the future as their program grows. And then this is just a really quick little collage of screenshots and wireframes that we have planned, where you can see the meal itself, see the catalog of meals. It's kind of covered, but there's, the login screen, the grid where you pull together the different meals and make the plan. And that's something, one of the projects that we're doing right now. And I'll throw it back to you, Sandy.
Awesome, Michael, thank you. And so one of the things that's really important to note about our Greener Village Food Center and the Good Meal Plan is that there's not a food center across the country that is using a planning tool. So we hope once we get going that we can share it, of course, right across the country. So Civic Tech, I'll give you a little story about what type of a group we are. We started in November of 2017, and there's like 5 or 6 of us, but that's the top photograph where we're actually having a design session on our logo. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of those people that are in that picture are still with us all these years. We've grown quite a bit over the years. The bottom photo, because we are more than half of our volunteers are new Canadians. The city of Fredericton awarded us with an intercultural award. So this was all of us at City Hall one night to collect the award. So that was pretty awesome. Next slide, Mike. So I always say that Civic Tech, we are like a family. As I mentioned earlier, we have more than half of our volunteers are new Canadians that have recently landed in Fredericton. And so we actively find anybody with some technology skills, or they seek us out, and have created a really warm, inviting, real family atmosphere. And I'm the mom, so we do have a really great time. We have, as you can see in the top left image, we have a potluck every year where people bring their, a signature dish, maybe something from their heritage. And so that's always a super interesting. And then on the bottom, we have these barbecue little competitions. So the summer before last, our Egyptian fellas, who are all of them in the background of the picture on the bottom left, had the barbecue, but this year the Brazilians were in charge. So that's Ricardo with the white t-shirt making picanha. So this summer we were able to host events outdoors. So we did have another barbecue in the summer. And some of the other things, so these 3 gentlemen here, that's Isa Tahir and Shadi, they are going to community college to study systems. I don't know what the program's called, to tell you the truth. I don't remember, but they are 3 boys from Syria. And so they come in, and where English isn't their first language, but they're pretty good speaking English. They speak English pretty well. They've connected with some of our Arabic speaking volunteers at Civic Tech who have a lot of experience in the tech sector. So that we're doing some mentoring, helping them with their studies. And, we do everything at Civic Tech, from helping our nonprofit community with really complex spreadsheets to building full-blown applications. When new Canadians come, we help, with their resume and move some languaging, shift the languaging to be maybe more recognizable and relevant to some of the work that's available here in our tech sector in the Fredericton area, which is quite large. So we've come to be a real going concern. People in our community know about us. They know that if Civic Tech has entered a team in the hackathon or a data visualization competition, they're to bring their A game, because Civic Tech will be bringing their A game. And, you know, it's just really lovely to be able to provide a warm, inviting, real community feel every Tuesday night to the team. We know that many people in our IT sector want to give back to their community, but you know, they don't want to sell raffle tickets or work registration booths. They want to use their skills. So there's a lot of mentoring that goes on, and it is you know, it's pretty awesome. Michael, next slide. So what's next for Civic Tech? Well, we're on a roll. We want to grow Civic Tech across the Maritimes. We have, this is a group of us from Civic Tech Fredericton went to St. John to get them going. So we have now Civic Tech St. John, Civic Tech Fredericton. And just today I heard from someone who attended a presentation I gave a while back from the Halifax area, and he's interested in being a champion in the Halifax area. We have a Civic Tech volunteer who just started joining us from Moncton, and so we're making some headway into the Moncton area. So that's our plan. We really think that you know, in the Maritimes we do things a little differently, and so we like to just have a, you know, support the growth of Civic Tech and the mandate of Code for Canada. So I think that's the last slide, Michael. Yeah, so this is where you can find us on social media, and we would love for you to follow us. And if there's any questions, I think that Rhonda's going to be monitoring the chat, and I do have some of the team on the call. So if there are technical questions that Michael and I might get stumped with, we see Rory's here and Rick and Joy. So we have some of our folks who can, and I'll just acknowledge the Joy and Rory and Mark and Rick are longtime Civic Tech volunteers. And Meredith Langille, she's in BC. She works for Greater Fredericton Social Innovation and is partnering on the data visualization competition that's happening next week at UNB.
Great. So I'll stop the share and let us go back to looking at each other.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sandy, for that presentation. That was really interesting and left me with lots of questions. We're a pretty small group in this breakout, so if you want to turn on your cameras, we can just have a little chat. And I'm just jumping back and forth between the Slack and the Twitter in case there's questions there. So I forgot to mention before the presentation started that we are recording this discussion and the presentation, and portions of it will appear on our YouTube channel tomorrow as kind of like a compilation of the entire evening. So if you'd rather not be captured on the video, feel free to keep your camera off, and you can just put your comments in the chat and we'll read them out. Okay, so into the Q&A. We've got, I think, about 15 minutes left. There's already a great question here from Ryan, so we'll start with that. He writes, I'd love to ask a bit more about what you think your key factors are to your success to keep the Civic Tech group going and growing, which has been a struggle elsewhere. So
And Rhonda, if I can just add for context around that, really excited to kind of connect with you all and learn a bit more about this. You know, I was involved with the group in Ottawa that got the Ottawa Civic Tech started a number of years back, and have been connected in with Civic Tech groups across the country. And I certainly know, you know, here in Ottawa, and particularly in a smaller center like Fredericton, part of that challenge is how do you kind of keep that organizational momentum going, particularly over the course of a number of years? And I've been so impressed with what I've been seeing out of Fredericton. And I'm just, you know, I'm kind of wondering, what's the secret to your success? I mean, was it just having the right people in the right place to get it going? You know, you mentioned the partnership you have with some of the broader community organizations. Have they actually been able to provide tangible resources to keep you going? Just really kind of curious if you were going to distill down what the secret to your success is. I'd love to hear it so we can help others replicate it elsewhere.
Yeah, I'll take the first start of that. Hey, Rory, thanks. So I think some of the civic techs across the country really struggle because their model is that every month they find a new location to meet and they find a company to sponsor. So the logistics of that is busy. We have one place, we meet the same place every week, and we, we order pizza and we raise money from our IT partners to get the pizza, to get the money for the pizza, which costs about $300 a month. I think the relationship with Greater Fredericton Social Innovation was actually who I work for. I'm the executive director. So it's part of, we're very involved in civic engagement. So I actually, I'm on the clock with Civic Tech. So I have, I dedicate a lot of time to it. But I think one of the reasons why we're so successful is because our municipality is so small. You know what I mean? It's easy to get the attention of people. And I'm wondering maybe Michael or Rory, some of our longtime volunteers, if you have some other feedback on that.
No, I think that's a big part of it. Having that sort of umbrella with GFSI, as well as just consistency, right? We've had this dependable schedule, dependable place to meet. It's shifted over time, but generally speaking, there's a solid core of people who always show up. And so then, new people have come and gone and everything else, but steadily we've grown year over year. And ultimately, everybody needs a Sandy.
That's super helpful. Thank you. Some really good insights around that.
Yeah, and Ryan, one of the other things that we do that's really cool is I reach out to all the placement officers. So at our Multicultural Association, when new Canadians are coming in on the skilled workers program. So I think Sharif is here, and maybe Joy, and Sheena. They send them to us. At our multicultural, the YMCA, they send them to us, and we help them. Really, I think that Civic Tech does more to help folks find work than they do, just because they walk in the room, and like Rory works at IBM, and you know what I mean. That's how things happen. And one of the other things with the partnership that's pretty successful and has taken a load off is, we manage the finances for Civic Tech. So that's GFSI manages the finances and stuff. So I think the partnership with the nonprofits is really valuable. I know that Derek was one of the Civic Tech Ottawa guys who really supported me in getting going when we started. And we did have a group from Ottawa come to our Civic Tech during GovMaker, and they were really, really key in getting us going. I'm sorry to hear that things have chugged along, but you just need to find a champion.
Thanks for kicking us off with gusto, Ryan. I've got a two-part follow-up question, which is, where do your project ideas come from, and what criteria do you use to prioritize the projects you work on?
So I'll take that one too. I vet them to make sure they're not a commercial solution. And so we don't have any time really for that, unless, we thought in the past, it's a total democracy. The team decides on what they want to work on. And so we've had some options before where somebody could drop some money and help us with pizza if a couple of people wanted to QA something or whatever, but we've never done it. But we've talked about it might be a possibility, but we're not into that because, everybody does that all day long. We're not, in their regular jobs. So, and mostly what happens is the nonprofit will reach out either through our website, through our email, through social media or whatever with an idea, and I vet them. And then I invite them to come and pitch to the team. And then they leave, and then the team decides if they want to work on the project. So it's just like that. And some, we've had some, it's like, I'm going to tell the story about the guy who came with the defibrillator. So he had this idea that we should map out defibrillators and have them on Google Maps or have some kind of app where people could find a defibrillator. So he came in and gave the big pitch, and then we sent him on his way. And then everybody was like, okay, what kind of liability? So there's a defibrillator in this building, but this building is closed at 5. And we did some research, and then we found out that, batteries are really expensive. Defibrillator batteries aren't always kept up. What kind of liability is that for our Civic Tech group? So we just politely declined. So it was the team who, had those whole conversations and had the mindset to go, wait a minute, what are we at risk? Yeah.
Yeah, those are important considerations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a really quick question while we're waiting for others to chime in, which I think is for Michael, because it appeared, or at least it appeared on one of Michael's slides. It was the term Scrum Master. So I think I'm familiar with that term from like a media relations perspective, but I'm curious, what is a Scrum Master in the civic tech world?
Oh, so yeah, not like that we're all shouting at each other and you're trying to see who gets the soundbite. No, actually, you know what? Our Scrum Master is here. I can see one of the boxes in the grid with her name on it. But I will not force her to unmute and answer the question if she doesn't want to. No, in agile methodology, so we operate on like sort of like a sprint every so many weeks, and the Scrum Master, she is the one that gets everyone aligned and makes sure that we're getting through our list of tickets, our list of topics that we need to go over and discuss and hammer out and commit to work on, and just follows up on all of that, just makes the machine run. So it's a super, super, super important person that's being quiet right now. But that's what we were talking about there.
Amazing, thanks. Does anyone else want to weigh in? Do you want to ask a question maybe by turning your audio on? All right, everyone's in listening mode. Well,
there was a question there about what do we think of the hackathon model?
Yeah, great.
Sandy, what do we think of that?
Well, the last hackathon that we competed in was using sensor data. Our city hosted it along with Planet Hatch, which is one of our tech incubators, among other things. Civic Tech came in first and second. So the team developed, so we like it. If you guys are interested, we took part in a study by Sir Wilfrid Laurier in Quebec that they researched across Canada and Brazil about hackathons, why people attend them, whatever. If anybody's interested in a copy of that study, I just received it last week. Yeah, it was really interesting, Ryan. So maybe if you could share your email with lovely Meredith up there. There she's waving, and I'll send you the study. It was really, really interesting because our municipality is planning another one on 5G, and they were also really interested in the results of the studies. So it's really interesting why people attend, what is the value of them. The team decides if they want to do that, to enter a hackathon. And one of the go ahead, Mike.
I'll also say just like on that, it's great to have the model we have and where the team decides if they want to enter into a hackathon, as opposed to a model where you sort of get together and hackathon a thing every meeting, right? Like if you tried to model your civic tech like that, I think our model is great, where it's not like each time you come together, it's like a new hackathon for the civic tech group. Because I got a sense that some people sort of considered considered tackling it that way. So I think ours is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody said if we partner, we have reached out to Girls Learning Code and Code NB and the Google group. We have reached out to invite them to come to our Civic Techs or whatever, but we don't actively partner with them on different projects and whatever. It's kind of, you know, they have to come to us to, like, we invite them to come to our group and join our team. I think we're a little more organized than those groups are in our city, and there's not very many of them. But we do look to our students a lot. I have right now 4 Renaissance College students that are in the leadership program at the University of New Brunswick. Actually, that's where we got Meredith from. She did her placement with us, and then we were able to hire her last year. I had 8 social work, social action students. So they help with implementation of the tools into community and engagement and media launches and social media stuff. We had 2 pro bono law students from the UNB Law come in and give some advice. So we do tap into our student body looking for placements. We do that a lot.
Super. There's another question in the chat, which I'd like to pair with a question I got on a different platform. So Ryan's question is, what percentage of your participants are technical, e.g. designers or developers, versus those who come from a more tech background? And I guess the second part of that is, do you have any outreach programs like into the local high schools where you're kind of telling people about civic tech and about these, you know, these sorts of opportunities?
I can answer the second part of that. We don't have any official programs into the high schools, but I have a high schooler who's in tech, and I did speak with his teacher. And a part of Greater Fredericton Social Innovation, we have volunteer Greater Fredericton, and so I've gone into schools, for high schools, for the past 3 years to talk about volunteering in community and always bring up civic tech, but it's not a target for us as much as it is in the university and the community college environment. So maybe between Michael and Rory, they could answer the question of our split of the technical expertise in our team.
I'll start. I mean, I think it's deeply sways towards people with technical expertise, but I mean across, and just as you said, Ryan, like that spans, you know, designers, people that are like UI UX designers versus architectural design versus like engineers, developers. I mean, QA, project managers. As I joked, we've got more than enough chefs, but like everyone with all of those sorts of skill sets. I don't want to leave anyone out though. I mean, I feel like anyone's welcome to, you know, pitch in however they're able to contribute. So, but I do think it skews that way for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, pretty much everybody's at least IT adjacent.
Yeah, and we do.
I was just going to say, I asked the question because that's interesting. I've seen with some civic tech groups, and actually, I think in Ottawa, it was one of the potential challenges because such a government town. You got a lot of people from a policy perspective who kind of had background on the civic side, but there were fewer people who were kind of on the tech side who could actually implement some of the ideas. So it's interesting. It sounds like you started with kind of a core group coming from the tech world. And that ended up being your foundation, which I suspect is probably one of the success factors that's let you been able to actually produce some tangible products out of it.
You know, Fredericton is often referred to as a small Ottawa. We are very much like Ottawa, just smaller. Fairly white collar, conservative, river running through the city. You know what I mean? It's very big government town. We have 2 universities, community colleges. You know, but we do have a large tech sector, and you know, so does Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we do we do look and focus to get into our tech area for sure.
There's one more question in the chat, which might be our last, because I just got a note saying they're going to wrap up the breakouts in a minute or two. So that's kind of our pre-warning before our warning. So the last question from Jeff is, do you have any programs for tech capacity building for nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, I was going to mention before that we also have some training. So we had, we just finished doing a month-long training on Tableau, and we do some AWS training and mentoring. And so we've actually formalized that process. And what was the question?
Capacity building for nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, I think what we've done is informally just helped them with, they know we're here for them, you know, help them with their spreadsheets, gave them advice. We've had them come in. We had one nonprofit come in and actually brought the representatives from the company that they hired to build this application for them, so the Civic Tech people could tell the company employees how to build it properly, because they were already in a signed contract with them. So, you know, we don't have anything formal. They come to us when they need us. And GFSI is really well connected with our nonprofit community. And so, you know, we are the gateway into the Civic Tech team. And so we don't have anything formal, but they're always asking questions like, you know, what's the best CRM? What's the, you know, and we've done some analysis for them on different products and that type of thing, but they're on a one-off, nothing formal.
Fantastic. So I have a question to Sandy and to Mike, but also to anyone who's part of the Fredericton Civic Tech group. Is there anything that you were sort of hoping to talk about or hear about tonight that we haven't quite got to? I think we might have another minute. Oh, we have 60 seconds.
No, I think for me, we've covered everything. I guess, Michael, that would be up to you now.
Yeah, no, we covered everything. I think we gave a good picture of, you know, what we've got going on, and hopefully that could just be taken everywhere and just grow and grow. So.
Well, thank you both. This has been really interesting. It sounds like you have a ton of things going on in Fredericton. And, you know, I think there's some truth to the idea that good things come in small packages. So small and mighty with pizza and love sounds like a winning combination in Fredericton.
Yeah, it sure is.
Today we are going to be talking about digital transformation in the government. We're going to start by setting the stage. We'll talk a little bit about why we've chosen speculative design in our approaches, what a speculative sprint is, do a little Steve Jobs surprise one more thing, and then end off with a conclusion. So to kick things off, I'd like to pass it off to John. John, I would like to kick it off to John to talk a little bit about transformation in the government.
Thank you, Farwa. Just a quick volume check. Can everyone hear me okay? All righty. Can everyone hear little Thomas okay?
We camped too at the campsite.
Thanks, buddy. Off you go. The good news is the stuff we're working on now will hopefully be serving Thomas by the time he needs it. So I think that's good. So basically, to start off this story tonight, I really want to give you the perspective of someone who's been participating in, managing, watching transformation in government for the past, 20 years. So that gives away a little bit. And then with the information that I had been working with, it's probably the past 30 years of the history. So if you want to really start talking about, you know, integrated service transformation in the government, the first big kickoff was in about 1996. Okay, so this is when we're really getting into more of that internet-based stuff. And it started as like the Government Online Initiative, which stemmed out of Treasury Board. Fast forward another couple of years, you end up getting to modernizing services for Canadians, which was another big initiative. Then we went on to something called the e-account. And somewhere in between there, we also had the one client view, which was kind of this notion of an integrated dashboard. So the same themes, the same mandates were driving all of these different initiatives, right? It always has the same goal, but we end up in a variety of sort of barriers, which I'm going to get into in a minute. So because we've gone through this a number of times, we get super, super good at planning and designing things, right? Figuring out, what the budget needs to be, what the resources are, that's all good. Your baseline concept, what it is we're trying to deliver, no problem. We come up with all that stuff super, super smooth because we've done it so many times. But then we start getting into our implementation ramp up, right? So it's time to start spending some of that budget, right? Begin to put your infrastructure in place, a couple of your dev environments, and then all of a sudden you find you start hitting a few barriers, right? These are what I'm going to call, from an organizational theory perspective, they're naturally occurring barriers, right? No one is setting out to put these in place. They just sort of come about with the process. So for example, so you get something like modernizing services for Canadians. Well, we probably had 50 projects start up under the banner of that initiative. So, things start to roll, but as you can imagine, they also start to compete, right? You have little sets of resources that can't be spread across all the projects. So now you're competing to get their time. Then you've got the fact that the authorities are kind of spread really, really thin across too many senior leaders. Right? So you've got somebody who's vying on one side versus someone else who's vying on the other side, and they can't seem to align on when resources are required, right? So then you get these mandate clashes between leaders. And as we're starting to sort of discuss what has to go forward first, what has to go forward second, people start pulling out those, those standard blackballs, right? Oh, well, we've got legal concerns here, or privacy is a concern because people don't want their data used in this way or that way. So, the plans for the progress, they really start to slow down, right? So then you think about, all right, you've taken all this time to talk about it, the resources and the budget that you lined up, all of a sudden, the timing with which you line that up doesn't match to when you're trying to actually do the work. So you don't have that match, and you end up sitting there, you're all dressed up, and you don't have the $20 to take the cab to the restaurant, right? So that, if it wasn't enough, right? So all that goes on, and then you get this 3-year shift in the government mandate, right? So it's sort of a cyclical thing, in a policy analyst lens of things. Every 3 years, right, something new comes in. The government kind of flips itself over to work on different things. So, okay, so that's fine. So that kind of brings us to where we're at today. So we're trying things a little bit differently. First, before we get there, I'm just going to remind us, Albert Einstein is often attributed to this quote, right? The definition of insanity, it's repeating the same mistakes over and over and expecting different results. This is not an intentional thing people are doing, right? The plans that we had 30 years ago, they were very avant-garde. The likelihood of getting there was probably pretty tough, right? But 20 years after, they're a little bit more reasonable. So we think, okay, the time has changed, so now the idea is right. Well, maybe, but there's still a whole bunch of other governance steps that are in place there as well. So the mistakes that were made initially over mandate concerns and starting up too many projects, those aren't known because we often have a lot of sort of shifting in our senior leadership in the government of Canada, right? You have a lot of executives moving around because they have a lot to offer. But when they leave one shop and they go to a new shop, you don't have that knowledge transfer, that would be useful for some of this. So that's fine. So now we're going to try something a little bit different. This is part of the reason that we've decided to partner with Code for Canada here. What we've done is we've approached it in like a well-managed project kind of a way. We've called it the Benefit Delivery Modernization, which is really just a clever masking for a ginormous initiative, right? Where we are taking all of the core programs of ESDC, employment insurance, Canada Pension Plan, the really big guns that drive our social system. And we're going to be replacing all of those systems, not just the systems, the people delivering those systems, the integrated tools, all the web environments that clients are going to access it by, all of this is rolled into this well-staged project. One project, right, as opposed to the 50. We've also brought in some disruptors. So there will be mention at some point about Pia Andrews. She is a very, very seasoned transformation specialist. She's done a lot of work in New Zealand, other countries around the world, public sector, private. She's very, very good at coming in and getting through the red tape of a system and getting stuff in place. So in using this disruptive technique, what we're going to do is build a whole bunch of cool stuff really quickly, right? We're going to engage with our users right at the beginning. We're going to create some energy. We're going to create some momentum. We're going to have people saying, this is what we want. We're going to sort of take over this messaging in an E sense. So this is part of the reason that we've decided, okay, we're going to partner with Code for Canada. This is what they do. They unlock the public services ability to use a lot of these new technological approaches. And when they get an old curmudgeonly guy like me, they really test out how it works with, you know, something like speculative service design. I'm going to pass it off to, is it to Thomas, I guess?
Bingo. Okay, awesome. So John's given us a little bit of his perspective, having been around for quite a while, and he's been setting the stage for why we're trying things this way. And I'm going to dive in a little bit more into the specifics of our project and why we took the route of speculative design, which is a sort of unusual and emerging approach to design rather than some of the more common things that you'll encounter in this space like UX design. I suppose what I need to do is take control here, don't I? Yeah. Great. Apologies. Oh, there we go. Okay. So our Code for Canada team in particular is in charge of the virtual concierge. And when we arrived, we had the same question you probably do right now. What is a virtual concierge? And there were sort of a range of answers, and it became clear we were going to have to do some sort of discovery to, you know, work on defining that. Now, as a UX designer, I play a fairly big role in the discovery process. If you are familiar with UX design or you've done a design thinking workshop, you're probably fairly familiar with this concept of the double diamond. But if you're not, the long and short of it is on the left here, you've got sort of all this problem definition stuff, because it's a really big part of UX design is identifying the right problem, making sure that you're understanding that. And we call that the problem space. So this is a different approach than the one speculative design takes. And to contrast them, I want to take a second to explain how, using a traditional UX design approach, you would identify a problem space. So for instance, you might start by looking at ESTC's programs holistically. Then you might identify the program with the lowest client satisfaction rate. Within there, you can identify the channel with the lowest client satisfaction rate, the demographic with the lowest client satisfaction rate. And you could take this very data-driven approach. This is a for instance, to come up with what's called a problem statement, which is when you've defined your problem. How might we improve the call center experience for clients who self-identify as having a disability and are seeking EI? So when you take this as the starting point, like this is the launch pad for your digital innovation, what you get is a vision of the future based on the problems of the present. So I'm going to actually bring up a quote from Pia Andrews, who John referred to recently. She's our Director General. In one of her blog posts, she wrote, if we only iterate away from pain, how will we design, let alone move towards a better future? I think that this is pretty profound, and it took us a while to get our heads around this, but I think it's also quite true that if your starting point for your sort of your innovation is correcting the problems of the past, then how can we get to something that is a little bit more forward thinking and visionary? So this is where speculative design comes in. So where UX design starts off, you know, as its launchpad, it has a problem space. Speculative design starts off in the preferable space. No presentation about speculative design is complete without this diagram. If you start looking into speculative design, you'll find this everywhere. And basically what it's trying to express is that, you know, from the present moment looking into the future, there's a wide range of possible futures. If you narrow that down a little bit, there are some plausible futures. And within that, there are some probable and preferable futures. And what we're really trying to establish in our speculative design work is we're trying to find that place where those probable and preferable futures overlap. And for our purposes, we called that the protopia. A protopia is not a utopia. It's not, you know, everything is perfect and everything is great, but it's a world in which everything is pretty good. So in a moment, Farwa's going to tell us about the speculative design sprint, which is where we actually went through all these steps where we engaged in the protopia. But the point that I want to make before we go over there is just to say that this protopia is a way for us to get away from the, you know, the very reactive thinking that is involved in focusing on the problems of the present, and to think a little bit more about a values-driven approach to design. You know, what kind of a thing would we like to create in a protopia? What would good look like? What kind of a service would we be happy to refer a relative to or a friend? So that's kind of the reason why we did speculative design as opposed to a more common approach. And to give you a little bit more of an understanding of this protopia thing, I want to show you just a few seconds of a video that we created for the participants in our speculative design sprint before we started. So should I hit play here, Neil, or should I leave that to you?
Have you guys optimized your, sorry, this is Becky here. Have you guys optimized your audio for the share here? Like when you start sharing a video, you have the option to click like optimize your video.
I guess we'll find out.
And if you haven't, just stop sharing and then share again and make sure to click that button so we can all hear.
Okay, so someone will let me know if the audio is not coming through.
The place, Canada. The year, 2071. The state of humanity, actually pretty good. The 2070s have been dubbed the new golden age. To be sure, things are not perfect, but year over year, things have been getting better since the dark period of the coronavirus. Progress has been made in every field of human endeavor, including social cooperation, environmental sustainability, and scientific and technological advances.
All right, I'll cut myself off there, but that gives you a sense of the way that we were approaching this protopia thing. So now if we imagine that we're in the protopia, let's start to think about what do good government services look like? And I'm going to fast forward for just a second here, and we're going to go back to my friend Hollow, who I introduced earlier. And because this is what you know, our group of sprint participants collectively decided that good could look like. So is everyone able to see me, or should we stop sharing, or what's the best way to do this?
If you stop sharing, it will look better on YouTube.
Okay, so we'll stop sharing. And do I need to like pin myself or anything like that?
No, you're good for me.
Okay. Let's just have a closer look at this funky bear. So Hollow, my job is ending soon. What can you do for me?
So, we can try to get you some income support from the government while we sort out what's next. Do you want me to get that started?
That would be great. Please do.
Okay, I've taken care of that. I'll let you know when they've made a decision, probably by Friday at the latest. In terms of what's next, I've done some calculations based on your interests and your financial resources. Here are your top 5 options. Find a summer job, spend the summer boosting your skills, look into a working vacation, take the summer off work, or let's talk about this later.
The working vacation sounded great, Hollow.
You can visit Japan or Australia on a working holiday visa. Which of those would you prefer?
Let's go to Japan.
The working holiday visa will cost 250 credits. You can earn 120 credits per month at these jobs doing farm work, tree planting, or teaching hover bus driving. Would you like to apply for these jobs?
Why not? It doesn't hurt to apply, right?
Okay, I've taken care of that. I'll let you know when they've made a decision. Probably by Friday at the latest.
Thanks, Holo. That's great.
Would you like to look at some other?
So that is what we came up with at the very end of it. And now to fill in some of the pieces in the middle, I'm going to pass it to Farwa to tell you what the process was like to get from that Protopia thing to this talking bear.
Thanks, Thomas. Sorry, just give me a minute. Okay, great. Okay, so you might be wondering, why the hologram? How did we get here? Why exactly did we choose to develop a hologram? Where did this idea come from? And what was its real actual purpose? Well, the hologram was a result of our foray into speculative design. So Thomas talked to you a little bit about what speculative design was, but speculative design in all is an approach with guiding principles. It doesn't really have a defined process. We at Team Toad recognized that exploring visions of the future would be very interesting, but we really wanted to ensure that the vision we set for the future is not just defined by us, but by people who are using the services. We wanted to create a prototype that would allow our concepts of the future to be user tested. So we started to look into what these workshops could potentially look like, but nothing quite fit our needs. So we decided to develop a process that would not only allow us to explore the future possibilities, but allow us to determine if this vision of the future was indeed what citizens today would get excited about. So we combined the sprint techniques by Jake Knapp from this book, Sprint, How to Solve Big Problems and Test New Ideas in just 5 days with the approach of speculative design. And as a result, we created a 16-hour process that lasted 8 days, 2 hours a day. And it started with a big challenge and a multidisciplinary team. We had 9 participants from across 5 teams who came in to join us. And what it ended up with was a user-tested prototype. So as I mentioned, we started with a big vision. So to really ensure consensus amongst our participants about what we should be building, we introduced the persona of Bob. So Bob is a hover bus driver in the future. He's age 30, he's a seasonal worker, and he's been laid off for the summer and he needs to apply for EI. So we started with a big vision question that looks at what does guiding and supporting Bob on the hybrid digital channel actually look like? So once we had this question, we spent the first day mapping. On the first day, what we really wanted to do was do a little bit of ideating, and what we resulted in was getting an idea of what would a predictive concierge look like in the future. How could we, if we could predetermine Bob's needs, how would that look like 50 years from now? How could we actually provide him and guide him through these services? So using that question, we spent the second day sketching. So this resulted in 9 different designs. And then on the third day, we were able to take these designs and present them to experts. So we had people from Policy Horizons who specialize in futurism and consider themselves futurists, as well as our Director General, Pia, who has dabbled quite a bit in speculative design as well, come in and give a little bit of their feedback and comments and critiques. We were then able to pick one design to focus on to prototype. So by day 4, we had decided that we wanted to test the predictive features of our concierge through our hologram. So day 4 was spent creating a storyboard to understand what the user experience and journey of using the hologram would look like. On day 5 and 6, we began to prototype our hologram and shipped out the pyramids to users so they could engage with it And by day 7 and 8, we were doing our user testing. If you'd like to get a more detailed information in regards to exactly what activities we produced and what we did, you can check out our website, toad4.ca, where we've have a blog and have documented our whole process. So what were our user testing sessions like? So our user testing sessions were held over 2 days, had 6 participants, all who fit within Bob's persona. They all identified as male, were aged 30 to 35, and were seasonal workers. And this is what we really got from these user sessions. What did we learn? Well, all of the participants really appreciated how frictionless the experience was to get EI. They acknowledged that applying to EI often has a lot of barriers, and this reduced them. 5 out of 6 participants had a delightful experience. They really enjoyed the human aspect of the hologram. They enjoyed engaging with something that was personable and friendly, a lesson for all of us who are developing things in AI. 2 out of 6 participants did express privacy concerns, which reinforced our idea that when we are sharing data, we need to be considerate and start including practices that ensure the privacy of our users. We also had 3 out of 6 participants that expressed that they would like the ability to choose their avatar and personalize it. So to us, that means personalization should be a key aspect of things we are building. 4 out of 6 participants also really appreciated the range of options presented. So in this case, we're calling options such as finding a job, finding training, working vacation, or time off work. But they also noted that they would like to see more holistic range of options. So one of our options was training, and the training was specifically for hover bus drivers to help them upskill. Someone noted that what if they would like a career change? They would like the option to have skills or training to do that. Someone else noted that being unemployed can be quite stressful and can cause pressure, and having access to therapists or therapy would be very helpful. So including options like that means to us those are avenues we can pursue later on. Another avenue we learned about to pursue or that we could later on pursue or study more of was understanding the top choice. 3 out of 6 participants asked to hear about working vacation options before hearing any other options. So that makes us wonder, what if working visas were more readily available for seasonal workers to use? Would they take advantage of it? Is this a policy question that we should be exploring? So these are just a few of the analysis and findings that we got, and all of these will help us determine what future paths to take. So what is the actual benefit of speculative design? Is it just to get information? Well, is Team Toad now building a hologram for Canadian citizens? Is that what's happening? Well, not quite yet, though we would like to someday. Speculative design really thrives on imagination and aims to open up new perspectives on what are sometimes called wicked problems to create spaces for discussion and debate. It brings ideas to forefront that we hadn't thought about, such as making working visas more accessible. And it inspires and encourages people to use their imagination more freely. More importantly, it embeds value-driven design into our process. We can now take the findings and user-validated hypothesis we've learned from the sprint and start using it to build blocks that will eventually help us towards a 50-year vision. It also really helps to build cross-functional teamwork. We had 9 people across 5 different teams with lots of expertise. We were able to get everyone's expertise and help them collaborate and agree and get consensus on what to build. So, but I don't want you to just take my word for it. I'm going to pass it to John now, who was an actual participant during this process, to talk a little bit about his thoughts on participation and how the process went for him.
Thank you, Farwa. So what was it like to participate? The first word I'm going to start with is uncomfortable. Right, like you know, as we started to go forward, we're like, oh, let's design things 50 years out. I'm like, no, hold on, whoa, legislation, acts, you know, all the privacy things we have to work out. We this was the point, right? The whole purpose of employing this process was so we could sort of break out of that thinking and you know, in a way, sometimes when you get to the end before the start, it kind of helps you figure out some ways to get from the start, right? So we started working. The cultural challenges were extremely obvious to me as I watched the participation of a lot of the colleagues that I brought in to help out with this. So, you know, at first people were very, very quiet. They weren't sure what to do. They weren't sure what to say, you know, a lot of sort of hold back. And then the ideas that started to come out, it wasn't stuff from 50 years in the future. It was 10 years ago, right? It was the things that have already been fully normalized and matured in private sector. And we're just talking about, hey, how do we introduce that in government? So that was amazing to see. So, you know, we deferred to Code for Canada. So, okay, we've got a little bit of a blockage here, right? Some folks aren't prepared to sort of get into that real futuristic, speculative thinking. Unlock us. So with a few little coaching sessions, maybe a little bit more hands-on guidance in some of the working groups, all of a sudden the discomfort became, you know, a degree of comfort. So the ideas started to flow more naturally. A lot of connections were made to identify the right steps to sort of market that concept, right? Like what are the right ways to bring out these ideas, you know? So it's non-committal, right? But it's still stuff that we think people would be interested in. So a lot of the work involved was sort of in that right messaging, carving things into blogs, just so. So basically, you know, the hologram that you've seen, the holo, it generated lots of senior level excitement. We even had one of the ADMs ask where she could get one of the little pyramidal things, right, to show off the hologram concept to others. So I think it was, in that sense, pretty effective. But the other thing is this. So, I mean, Code for Canada will be with us, you know, probably until August. You saw that we did a bunch of crazy 8 designs in one of the sessions. We picked one of those things. So there's another 7 ideas there that have their own little garden path that we can walk down and sort of start to explore. So we walk out of this process with a whole bunch of things we can look at. And we also rooted some thinking in the speculative design process, right? We're already talking about how we can put some of these steps into our regular work as we start to do things like a digital accelerator. I think I'm handing back to Farwa.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, John. So as many things, when you set out to do some things, you encounter a couple bumps along the way, but sometimes you discover things you don't expect to. So we set out to do speculative design and create one prototype, but ended up building something else that was pretty useful along the way. I'm going to pass it off to Neil to talk about it a little bit more.
Thanks, Farwa. Yeah, so I'm excited to sort of pull back the curtain and just share how we built Hollow Bear, or how we got that experience going. But I also want to start with an unrelated story. It's actually how Slack got started. I don't know if, assuming everybody's seen Slack, it's a popular messaging tool. The team at Slack got together and they were actually building a massive multiplayer online game. And to communicate, the engineers created this side project that allowed them to exchange messages. And that ended up being their actual product. And they abandoned the game altogether and then created this business out of this messaging tool. And I just found that I wanted to share that story because it's kind of something interesting that popped out from our experience, is that we built this experience, but we actually got a side thing as well, which I'll talk to you about now.
Sorry, Neil, I'm just gonna jump in. And unfortunately, we've got 5 minutes left. So.
Oh no! Okay, very quickly, rapid fire this thing. So Friday, halfway through the sprint, Thomas sends me a message. It has a video which shows a hologram. I freak out. I look like this. I think I couldn't see, but lots of freak out. Realized we had a challenge. How do we prototype this thing and remotely control it? The solution was this holo controller, where we stitched together videos and some sort of way to control those videos. So to come up with some videos, we actually had John voice out, I think, about 21 or 22 different possible videos. So John is actually the voice of the Hollow Bear. I don't know if anybody picked up on that. We then used Apple's Memoji feature to create the bear. And Apple obviously had to arrange them, but we picked the bear. I will not show you these, but that is basically what the bear looks like up and close. These were some of the Memojis that didn't make the cut. There we go. And then the controllers. So the other side of the controlling the experience, you know, the issue was we're over here in a remote environment and we want to control what somebody sees on their phone. And so this was an early sort of technical diagram that we did. And then this is the actual application that we created. We sent users to a web page, and they were, and we also separately shipped them out that pyramid. They put 2 and 2 together, and then we controlled their experience based on using this app. And so there's no artificial intelligence or natural language processing involved. We actually have sort of a human playing puppet master behind the scenes based on what a person says, essentially. And so here's another screenshot of that tool. And so the challenges with this tool, obviously, 1, nothing existed, so we built it from scratch. But 2, network latency. If we had a slow internet connection, that could really slow things down. But what we've learned now is that now that we have this tool, we can simulate, we can use this tool to simulate other experiences. And we're actually changing the code right now to create a remote experience with a chatbot. And so now we can test a chatbot with users and sort of puppet master that experience without having a completely artificial intelligent chatbot running in the background, essentially. So I'm going to hand that back over to Farwa, who will take us out in record time.
Thanks, Neil, for taking us through that. I'm going to also try and talk pretty quickly. So we've accomplished quite a bit during this process, but what we're really hoping this process will do is that it will get people to start thinking about the potential of the future and how we can harness innovation for good. I'm going to now pass it off to John to speak a little bit more about the art of possible and close us out. You're on mute, John.
Better?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you mind clicking forward for me, Neil? I can't, the control's not real. Okay, there we go. So what does this mean, right? How do we actually apply all of this moving forward in a government landscape, right? Thinking about the barriers that are in place. To be fair, I'm going to place a caveat here, right? This is a bit of a story of what I'd like to see with a lot of work to get it to be. So right now, this is kind of our setup. It's become normal to feel like we're on the other side of a wall from our clients, right? We can't get as close to them as we'd like to. Every time we start to really dig into how they're feeling, what it is they're looking for in any kind of an opinion sense, we're really sort of pulled back, right? It's not the level of engagement that is encouraged at the moment. You got your engagement rules. We've also got sort of, a suite of laws that go back 60 years, right? They didn't contemplate any of this stuff. Digital this, integrated that. There was nothing of the sort. It all still pertains to, paper-based processing. You've also got a lot of different authorities, whether they be political authorities, right, or those close to, and a lot of advocates, from privacy organizations and things like this. They're super, super worried about the risks and the problems. We've had our share of press, right? ESDC especially, lost hard drives, things along those lines. So it's understandable why those feelings are there. And still, this time around, we're going to go a little bit different. So there's that wall again, right? But we're building a ladder this time. And to start, we're going to go right over that wall. We're going to use different kinds of people to work directly with the people. We're going to learn what the users really want, and then we're going to kind of prove that we understand what those needs are. We're going to build out material things that you can feel, you can touch, you can play with. It's going to show and demonstrate that we really get it, what the service targets are. So with that, we'll have a whole bunch of excited people. We'll have a volume, right? It won't be a bilateral discussion with a legal group in a room. It'll be a whole bunch of people voicing at the same time something that they're looking for. And if you think of the impact of many, many voices, right, going towards individual groups that represent a certain vantage point, whether that be privacy or legal or otherwise, you can start to show how the positive support outweighs the risk. So with a little bit of luck in this approach, we'll start to hit some of our transformation targets. That'll create the right momentum. We can keep moving forward. Eventually, we can achieve our integrated service delivery utopia.
Thank you, John. And that wraps up our presentation for today.